Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gilda Evans, bringing you the Autism Resource Podcast. This podcast and the ARP website are your one stop knowledge and resource base for autism and much more. I'm happy to have Lisa Mosko join me as my guest today. Lisa is the founder of Speducational, a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering families of students with disabilities to effect positive systems change in special education. Lisa is known for her highly detailed knowledge of educational policy, her fierce advocacy through community organizing, and her ability to collaborate and build consensus. Among other positions, she has served as chairperson for the Los Angeles Unified School District's Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. Lisa is also the mother of two incredible, twice exceptional kids. Welcome, Lisa, and thanks so much for taking the time to join me and discuss the work you do.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, to get us started, tell me what inspired you to start Speducational and what sets it apart?
I'm glad you asked. Educational is the only parent-led nonprofit dedicated exclusively to championing the rights of students with disabilities. And I'm referring to students between pre-K and 12th grade, public school students with disabilities. And we basically focus on everything that falls under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which is where we get the 504 plans, in the pre-K 12th grade public school space.
Okay. Now, parents are often underestimated in terms of the force that they represent in special education reform. Can you walk us through a specific example where parent organizing led to real systems change?
Yes, I can actually give you an example of the work we are doing right now. Thanks to a grant given to us by Educating All Learners Alliance, we recently launched a fellowship program this fall. The fellowship is comprised of 20 parent leaders, advocates for students with disabilities. All of them are parents of students with disabilities. Some are also self-advocates, i.e., adults with disabilities. And the fellows very carefully designed a community-centered survey that they distributed to their communities of families of students with disabilities, asking the questions that we wish school districts would ask. They asked questions like, has your advocacy for your child contributed to anxiety, depression, chronic illness, or fatigue? Have you had to outsource supports for your children that you were not able to access through your school district? And has that created a financial burden on your family? We asked, have you experienced employment disruption because of the time it takes to advocate for your child? And the statistics that came in are no surprise to us. It simply confirms what we ourselves experience daily. 69% of families responded that they struggle with anxiety and depression, directly related to all the barriers they face advocating for their kids. 73% have had to scale down on work or stop working altogether in order to fully support their child. Spanish-speaking families are doubly, sometimes triply impacted. Low-income families, which were pretty evenly split between English speakers and Spanish speakers, were also doubly, triply impacted. And there's been a huge disparity in the statistics across the board and all the questions we asked, running across race, language, and class lines. As part of our community organizing effort, we figured, let's ask those who are closest to the problem and see what's actually going on. Let's offer up the why we have such abysmally low performance rates for students with disabilities. Oftentimes people take it for granted or assume, oh, the poor special needs child, in air quotes, I say that. This poor special needs child can only accomplish so much. But actually, research shows that over 80% of students with disabilities can achieve at grade level and 100% can do so much more when they're offered proper supports. But right now in the state of California, only about 14% are achieving at grade level. And when we look at the standardized test scores, the SBACs or the CASP tests across California, and this information gives us the why behind the numbers that the school districts gather information on.
A couple of questions come to mind. This information that you've been gathering, who are you passing it along to specifically? What impact has it had so far? And you mentioned California. Are you specifically focusing on the school districts in California, or have you reached out into other states as well?
That's a great question. The grant was for us to work across school districts in Los Angeles County. And I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we had results coming in from about 40 different school districts, maybe more, in California. And we've also been performing outreach to our school districts. So we created the survey and we started contacting our school districts. The fellows represent over a dozen school districts across LA County. And we all reached out to our school district board members, administrators, and said, we're doing a survey. We'd like you to take a look at it. And two school districts have already responded that they want to incorporate the questions that we put into our survey into their own surveys. And one school board member actually shared out our survey to his board district in order to get the word out and have as many people as possible participate in the survey. And we're also developing an IEP toolkit by and for families. Whenever you arrive at an IEP meeting, you might get this giant manual. It says parent rights, or a lot of school districts have the IEP toolkit or IEP manual, but it's often filled with jargon and acronyms. It's very hard for especially the newer parents in the process to understand. We want to create a toolkit that is much more accessible and easy to understand for families who are just starting out and are truly overwhelmed. And we actually already have interest, even though we are still working on developing the toolkit. We have a couple of school districts already expressing interest in adopting it and distributing it to their families.
And I imagine since an IEP is something that is not strictly for California, it is something that is national, this would be applicable for families across the nation, not just here in California.
Absolutely. And jumping back to the survey, I know a parent advocate in another county who says, I want to do the survey too. And I'm going to be following up with her. And I'm sure that this is something that can be easily replicated and can go across California or across the United States. It's easily replicable and it yields such important qualitative data that school districts are not yet gathering.
I hope that happens because it sounds like an incredibly helpful tool that you have developed here and are spreading to the school districts in California, and hopefully it'll go beyond. So I want to make this a little bit personal now. As both a professional advocate and a mother of twice exceptional children, how has your personal experience shaped the way that you approach systems change?
Everything we included in the survey is something that I've personally experienced as a parent of two students who needed IEPs. I started out like any parent. I had no background in education, no background in disabilities. And when my kids began struggling in school, I was absolutely overwhelmed, confused, and I made missteps at first because I was often given the wrong information. However, I also had the privilege of a relatively good education, and I had the privilege of time to do a deep dive into ed code, into the laws that govern our IEPs to learn my rights. And once I started getting the hang of everything, I realized that I had come this close to falling into an abyss where my kids would never be able to reach their full potential. And I realized that for others who might struggle with language barriers, financial instability, maybe didn't have the benefit of a good education and can't just open up a book of ed code and understand it, I realized that I needed to be someone who would help them with that.
That is fantastic. I love the parents that see that gap, they see that abyss, they see that need, and say, I guess it's going to be up to me. I'm going to step in and fill it. I'm going to make this happen one way or another. What is the one thing that you wish that every parent knew before they walk into that IEP meeting?
Trust your gut. If you think your child needs more support than is being offered, don't stop there. Leave no stone unturned. Learn everything you can. Plug into networks of other families experiencing the same thing. Together, we hold so much knowledge. And when I talk about leaving no stone unturned, think creatively about how you can fill the gap that might be created by the school district. If they're not offering you enough, either learn from professionals like IEP advocates or special ed attorneys who often give free consults, whether or not you have a case that would be appropriate for you to ask for alternative dispute resolution or file for mediation and try to negotiate with the district, or think of other resources that might help. But don't just give up. Don't be discouraged. You have to keep putting one foot in front of the other until you get what you need for your child.
Okay, now I want to come full circle back to the beginning of our conversation and ask you something because you have worked across many different organizations and roles. So, what have you learned about what actually works when trying to change a massive system like public education? And what should families and allies be paying attention to right now?
In terms of changing a massive system, I often joke that I feel like I'm trying to attack a huge mountain with a little chisel and axe. But I will say that relationships, consistency, and perseverance do go a long way. I do believe that it takes all stakeholders, and I'm talking about not just families or parents, but administrators, legislators, educators. It takes everyone involved to affect systems change. And I have a motto, I always go hard on the problem, but not on the person, because it's important to look for ways together and find common ground and move forward with that. Our kids need the adults to stop fighting and to focus more on problem solving together. That for me is super important. And when you combine that with large numbers of families who are all pushing for the same thing, that's when you can see systems change.
Power in numbers, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, is there anything that I haven't asked you at this point that you would like to mention? And also, what do you think is the most important takeaway for families and parents and advocates to have from our conversation?
I'd love to address the seismic shifts that are always looming in special education at the federal level. And it feels very scary. It always feels, oh gosh, is the rug going to be pulled out from under us any minute now? What I would tell people is that organizations like COPA, it's a Council of Parent Attorney Advocates, it's a nationwide network of attorneys and advocates focused on special education, are doing great work holding potentially disastrous changes at the federal level at bay. So you should follow them on social media and keep an eye out for updates and calls to action, like calling your senators and congressmen and women. But it's also important to focus on state legislation and funding, because what a lot of people don't realize is that the federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which governs IEPs. It is the law that came into play in 1975 under another name, but it was the first law that made it mandatory for schools to accept students with disabilities and to individualize their instruction through IEPs. That law actually, by law, must be replicated into state law. So every state essentially holds the same rules as federal law, and sometimes even expand on them and improve on them. So what we have to do is that even if everything falls apart at the federal level, hold your state accountable. Be involved with your state senators and Congress people and make sure they know that you will not accept this, and make sure that you are involved in grassroots organizations that are pushing for this. You can also push for it in your local school districts, become active in the committees and build relationships with administrators and just make sure that families are not going to allow it to happen.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time and for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much. And if you want to learn more about Speducational, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Speducational_gifted. Thanks so much.
Thank you again, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other popular platforms. We'd appreciate you taking the time to leave us a review. You can also listen to the podcast on YouTube at ARP Social, where you'll find bonus content. And be sure to follow us on Facebook or Instagram to get up-to-date notifications about the latest news and episodes. If you would like more information on anything we've covered on the Autism Resource Podcast, visit us online at autismresourceproject.org/podcast. Be sure to check out our growing website often, since we are continually adding useful information and resources. I want to thank our listeners for spending part of their day with us. This is the Autism Resource Podcast, and I'm Gilda Evans, reminding you to take care of yourself and that special person in your life.